Is China's release of DeepSeek the black swan that no one expected? Or is it just fake news? We're going to have this conversation with the one and only Taylor from Life Goal Investments, who last week said, I'm taking the Russell 2000 over Mag 7. And boy, the bloodbath this morning, I'm sure glad he chose that. How you doing, buddy?
I'm great, man. Definitely an interesting day. I'm East Coast time zone, so I was up early this morning, and when I woke up, the Nasdaq was down 4.5%. Now it's down 3%. So you've gotten a little rally since the pre-markets, but nonetheless, this is a bloodbath of a day. And I think there's a little blend of this is the black swan that no one could see coming, and two, I think there's some fake news embedded in this as well.
Yeah. I think this will be fun to unravel. Again, it's happening in a news cycle that's just faster than maybe what we saw in the .com era. I agree with you. I think there is some legitimate engineering inside here, kind of a mental thought process that is going to ripple through the industry and probably do it very, very quickly, right? One of the things, at least I know about tech is when somebody has a revolutionary idea or approach, it is quickly copied. And I think that's probably a lot of what you're seeing today, because again, if it's true that DeepSeek is running on roughly, they say 10,000 Nvidia gaming chips, right? Because obviously China is under, export control. They can't get the big $40,000 clusters. It's just going to fundamentally change the CapEx picture, right? If you look at what Microsoft and Meta and Google and all of those folks are doing, Nvidia's pretty much got 7 or 8 buyers taking everything they own.
Correct.
And, you've got to be looking at those, those future spend and go, do we really need those?
Totally.
Right. So
I think the quote that immediately comes to my mind is like, necessity is the creator of all invention. And what you're seeing right now is the Chinese getting incredibly creative because, again, know that what our policy is not to ship our most technologically advanced chips to China. So therefore, they don't have access to Blackwell, which is NVIDIA's newest, best chip on the market. And apparently they were able to, and again, this is Chinese news, so you got to take it all with a grain of salt. They were able to build an AI model that competes head to head and better in a lot of areas than OpenAI with $6 million invested, which is mind numbing.
Yeah, and again, you could think about the investors in OpenAI. I believe I read that their last round, first off, they've raised over $17 billion.
That's a B on it, not an M, like what we're talking about.
And their last valuation was 157 billion, right? Was
Correct.
The company. So, you're the stock guy. You've been doing this for 12 plus years. If DeepSeek is even 60, 70, 80% legit, you've got to see that 157 billion valuation being whacked, right? I mean, you just have to.
Undoubtedly today, I would say now OpenAI is not publicly traded. So right. They have to raise and get valuations at their raise levels, but they have to be, if you were publicly traded for OpenAI right now, it's cut in half. It has to be. There's no way it's not, if not more.
Yeah. Yeah. Cause again, it's one of the things that I look at this, right? I don't have a horse in the race. I don't own any of the stock of any of the players. I'm looking at this and going, might this actually long-term be good news for Nvidia?
Not for Nvidia. No, this might be good news for the other tech suitors. It's not good news for Nvidia.
Okay. Well, let me show you what I was thinking, and then you could still disagree.
Yeah.
Because again, I'm looking at this going, and again, tell me I'm wrong. I love it when you do that. I love it when all my speakers do that. But when I look at Nvidia, they were essentially producing a high-end product for 7 or 8 buyers.
Correct.
Now, these buyers had deep pockets, and they're talking about $60 billion capital expenditures. It's a good way to live when you've got 6 buyers with endless money, right? So that's where they were. If we are now looking at DeepSeek, again, assuming it's 70, 80% legit, and they did it without these expensive GPUs, and they did it for 10 million, not 100 billion. Might we go from a world of 7 or 8 Nvidia buyers to 7 or 800 Nvidia buyers? Now, again, a lot more customers, a lot more work, all of that. But couldn't this just invite a lot more people to enter the space? Because if you were trying to compete with the 7 or 8 buyers, you'd never get on the list.
Yep.
So what do you think about
Yeah.
that?
So I think that Nvidia has 77% margins right now. That's roughly what their profit margins are.
Wow.
And 77% profit margins are going to be eviscerated. You're just going to see compression across the board. And I think that Nvidia is down 13% right now. Nvidia has shaved $450 billion in market cap overnight. I looked at it last night before I went to bed. I went to bed about 10 p.m. Eastern time. It was down 1%. As of this morning, and as of right now trading, it's down 13%. It's lost more value than Netflix, Salesforce, Home Depot, There's only 20 companies in the world worth more than $450 billion. That's what it's lost in 12 hours.
Yeah, I saw that this morning. Their market cap loss is more than Costco. Wow.
Yeah, there's only 20 companies in the world worth more than they've lost. This will be the largest single day loss of all time, and it is 100% warranted, in my opinion, because what's going to happen now is people are going to realize that we don't need this thing that Jensen Huang brings on stage that's this big to do the compete. Right. And so at the end of the day, what it's going to do is force innovation on these big AI data center developers. And what you're going to see is potentially Meta not spend $65 billion on AI spend, which is their intention. Their Microsoft, $80 billion in AI spend was their announcement of what they anticipated to spend this year. And what you're seeing investors do right now is say, F you to both of them. You guys are not good stewards of my capital. You have not spent my money well. Look what the Chinese are doing for 1,000th of the spend that you guys are spending right now. And look what they've developed. Why on earth are you going to Nvidia chips right now that cost an ungodly amount of money and not getting more creative like countries overseas are?
All right, I'm convinced I'm wrong. You're right. Again, I think long term it might bring more buyers, but the margins are going to get collapsed. The need for the big chips are going to go down. You're probably already seeing buyers, procurement agents for these large, spenders cutting future spend.
Totally.
Right?
And so the big justification for valuations on Magnificent Seven stocks or anything that had ever mentioned AI is this moat. Where's the moat now? Exactly. When a company over 2 years has developed with $6 million of capital spend, they've developed what OpenAI has with every power in the world, every investable capital in the world behind them. They have Trump coming out and launching this massive Stargate of $500 billion of investment, getting this group of consortium of investors together. What does that do to Trump now? What does that do to his plan to launch this Stargate?
Well, let's play with that a little bit because, again, you're right. This came out the other day. First off, $500 billion could still be spent, but now what you can do with it? You're going to be 1,000 more times more efficient, right?
But I think that what they've done, and granted, take this with 100% certainty that I am not a techie. What they've done is just clearly learned where there are efficiencies and breakthroughs, and we have not learned that yet. So maybe this is just a complete replication. We can flip it back and do this more efficiently on our end, or maybe there's some special sauce, and I don't know what that is, and I don't know how long it takes our developers to discover what that special sauce is to add the efficiency that we need to bring costs down.
Well, here we go. I'm going to give full credit to where I got this from. I read a lot of articles. I think Morgan Brown on X or Twitter did the best kind of summary. So Morgan Brown gets full credit for this.
I'll look him up.
Yeah. Here we go. He has a whole thread. I'm actually going to jump to number 3. So the question is really how? How did they do this? They, meaning China, rethought everything from the ground up. Traditional AI is like writing every number to the 32nd decimal place, right? 99.32nd decimal place. DeepSeek was like, what if we just use 8 decimal points? It's still accurate enough. Boom, 75% less memory needed.
Mind numbing. I put in, so when I do my posts every day, I do 90-second, 60-second posts every day on social media. And what I do is I'm long-winded. So I don't let AI write. I let AI condense for me. So up until this point, guess who I've been using? Like every other person on planet Earth has been using ChatGPT, which is why OpenAI has a valuation. The parent of ChatGPT has a valuation of $157 billion.
It's correction. They had a valuation of $157 billion.
Fair. Guess who I used this morning?
You did.
They did just as good of a job, if not better. Better's a stretch. They did just as good of a job of taking 1,400 characters and turning it into 900 characters and maintaining the message that I need, maintaining the integral points that I'm trying to drive home.
All right. So here's another point. Again, shout out Morgan Brown. Again, somebody who I did not follow, but now follow because he did just a great job. This is point number 4 in his thread. Then there's the multi-token system. Normal AI reads like a first grader. The cat sat. DeepSeek reads the whole phrase at once, which is 2x faster, 90% as accurate when processing billions of words. This matters.
I don't know how to comprehend what that says, but I get the thesis behind it. Like, listen, let's take it in its entirety, break it down quickly, spit it back out, as opposed to breaking down every individual character. And again, this is all news to me. So this is me digesting on the run here.
This is the wrinkle. This is the one that is point number 5 in Morgan Brown's thread, is the special extra sauce to me. This is the one. Here's the real clever bit. They built an expert system. Instead of one massive AI trying to know everything, like having a personal doctor, a personal lawyer, a personal engineer, a personal accountant, they now have specialized experts that only wake up when needed.
Interesting. So they lie dormant. They don't take energy. They don't take compute. They don't take any of that. And then when they're called upon, hey, we need our lawyer now. We need our CPA now because it's tax season. Step on up.
Exactly. So to put this in traditional models, they have 1.8 trillion parameters active all the time. DeepSeek is estimated to have 671 billion, but only 37 billion active at once.
Interesting.
That's the special sauce. You don't need one godlike creature that knows everything.
Yep.
Have, the Avengers and just tap the Avenger that you need when you need it.
Totally. Yeah. And the spiral out of this is a few fold. So like Trump has made it very, very clear that the focal point of the economy moving forward, where he's going to deploy assets and resources, is AI. Yeah. And he said very clearly that this is a matter of economic and national security, that we maintain our AI leadership. So when you look at the markets today, not only do you see tech selling off, to state the obvious, we knew that was going to happen, but secondarily, you also have a massive bond market rally right now. That has nothing to do. That has nothing to do with the valuation of Nvidia.
No, it's really wild. I'm glad you brought. I got one more point from Morgan, but I'm glad you brought that up. When I woke up this morning, and I expected a bloodbath. Right? Again, I was doing research on this over the weekend. I'm like, Nasdaq's effed, Nvidia's effed, Microsoft effed. I was shocked to see the bond market. That's a violent move up in price, down in rates. And I actually told people on the daily financial news, we might get mortgage rates sub 7% today. The move is so violent. And then I scratched my head and said, why? And the only thing I could come up with is people are scared, right? They
totally.
That's the only thing I could think of. No economic data changed, no this or that. The other thing that happened is the Fed Watch tool now pricing in 2 rate cuts, full rate cuts in 20. It was that fast. Congratulations, folks. Nasdaq crashes 3-4%, and you get a bond market rally.
Wow. I'm not, this whole Fed, like you and I have just been laughing about this Fed Watch nonsense for now 2 years. And it's like, okay, well, you get the cake and now you can eat it too. Meaning like when the market was going up, there was no concern. They were continuing to cut rates, but now they're going to care about the market when the market flips. And now you're going to say they're going to cut more violently. Like it can't work like that. Otherwise, Jerome Powell just becomes a puppet of the market.
Yeah, Exactly. And again, we're talking about, I don't know, when I looked this morning, it was actually, what company surprised me was Broadcom. When I looked this morning, they were actually down more than Nvidia this morning.
It's everything chip oriented is getting absolutely smoked right now. Utilities are getting smoked. Why?
Energy, yeah, the follow through, right?
Because they're saying, listen, if they can compute with, not 1.8 trillion parameters always being active, and therefore you don't need. So, like, I saw a stat, and this was before, and I'm sure this still holds true, but it's every OpenAI search, one OpenAI search takes 10x the compute, thus 10x the energy that a Google search does. So if they're lying dormant with their models on 3/4 of the underlying terabytes of information, whatever, I'm clearly talking outside my bailiwick.
This is not where you live every day.
Yeah, you get the point. If all of a sudden you don't have this massive energy demand, and I think that we're working on iterations out now, and that's what we do, I guess, as you prognosticate into the future. But it'll be very interesting to see if energy demand comes meaningfully down, and then how quickly can these tech companies pivot. Right now, I mean, Meta has announced a massive facility of data, an AI center that's going to take place in Louisiana, and they've announced 3 massive power plants surrounding it to power only that data facility. Those have the ability to generate enough power to create energy for 1.5 million homes. And it's like, now do they continue to build, and then there's an excess rather, or like, how does it work?
Yeah. Well, let's give Morgan Brown his flowers. One last thing I saw, kind of the results. This is 0.7 in his thread. The results are mind blowing. Training costs basically used to exceed 100 million. It's why you only had 7 or 8 players in the space. Now, 5 million. GPUs needed. Again, it was estimated you would need 100,000 GPUs, right? The Blackwells of the world. Now, 2,000. API costs 95% cheaper. And you can run this on gaming GPUs, not the $40,000 Blackwell stuff. So, yeah, the world is flipped. Now, again, huge caveat, we're assuming this is all real and legit. And the good part about that is it's actually all open source. So, every engineer in the Valley is downloading, looking at source code, backing in, seeing if it's real. But I think I think, dude, by the end of the week, you could see some of these, big players putting out new models, copying the innovation ideas with DeepSeek.
This is probably a rat race that we haven't seen in Silicon Valley since, this is an arms race. This is absolutely what it is. And when you think about yields coming in like that, the reason why yields were so high was because of the dominance of the United States, right? Our economy was so much stronger than the rest of the world, and thus propelling our rates higher in our yields. And that's why we have so much higher yields on our bonds than other national countries have, even though. So at the end of the day, it's like, all right, now that calls that into question. And then when you look at the semiconductor space, you have to realize that the semiconductor space is one of the most cyclical spaces on planet Earth. When you look at semiconductor stocks, they are like this. And I'm telling you, it's just, we've never had a semiconductor stock be the largest stock in the world. Yeah. And
it's funny. Let me, again, were you on Wall Street, or were you still in school when Cisco was the dominant player and had the biggest market cap and was splitting every year?
I was not around at that point.
Right. So I was playing with Cisco. It's how I turned $7,000 into almost $200,000. And then it went all to shit and I lost 80% of my wealth. But what I remember from that situation, and I'm doing this completely off the top of my head, so I could be wrong, but what really happened is they finally had a competitor. And I want to call it Juniper. It might have been 3Com. But basically, for the longest time, Cisco was the only player in networking. And then somebody else finally stepped up. So to your point about NVIDIA's margins, I think Cisco was running at like 90% margins, for years. And then they weren't. And it's what's really sad about this is, if you've been holding on to your Cisco stock since the peak, it's been like 24 or 25 years and you're still not back to the peak.
Yep.
So I'm going to go back and look that up. But this could be that moment for Nvidia where they just get whacked and they never see that high again.
Well, what happened with fiber optics? They were literally burying fiber optics, which are the AI chips of today. You already had Satya Nadella, the CEO of Microsoft, come out and say, I no longer have a chip problem. I now have an energy problem. And now maybe this will alleviate some of the energy problem. Yeah. But he already said, I'm full up. I'm full up on
I'm good. Oh, man. So when we step back, we kind of round up this first discussion together.
We got to go one more place first.
All right. Where are we going?
Crypto.
Oh, yeah. So that's interesting. Again, I expect the NASDAQ to be down hard, Nvidia to be down hard. Double-digit decline in Nvidia didn't surprise me. The bond yield surprised me. And then to see Bitcoin sell off, it shocked me to see that move.
Not surprising at all in my mind.
Okay.
Zoom out, and I'm not talking day to day. I'm not talking week to week. I might not even be talking about month to month, but certainly year to year. You look at when things get nasty in tech stocks, things get nasty with Bitcoin. It's the same intrinsic bias.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. What is that called?
Correlation? The correlation. Yeah. And the correlation, so even to the S&P 500, long-term directional correlation, and I won't get into the definition of that, but long-term directional correlation between the S&P 500 and Bitcoin is 92%.
Wow.
I don't have the stat on the NASDAQ, but it certainly is higher than that.
Yeah, so let's play that out. So when I look at where the pain is, again, I think this could be Nvidia's moment, and go back and look at Cisco where it's a decade or more before it kind of gets back to that. It could be that kind of pain, that kind of just tectonic shift. So there is that. Then there is kind of the bond market. Is this just, I didn't, do you have the VIX? Like, what did the VIX do this morning?
Oh, VIX is up big. VIX is up like 20%.
Yeah. So
that's the fear index for those that aren't familiar with the VIX.
So that makes sense. But again, when I look at the bond market, nothing economically really changed. So there might be some give back. And then you're right, crypto. It'll be interesting because what is happening with the crypto bros is a lot of them still go on freaking margin. Right. And then they have a violent move and their tech portfolio craps out, and they get liquidated over here. And I don't know why they haven't learned to just own your stuff and stop being leveraged out.
And
it's crazy.
The interesting point is that on Friday, Trump has this big executive order to launch a Bitcoin wealth fund. And even on that, the thing that shocked me about that is that you didn't get a rally on Bitcoin on that. That absolutely shocked me.
I think they were hoping for the U.S. government to be like MicroStrategies and say, we're going to buy 1,000 of whatever it was. And that wasn't there, right? It's basically, hey, if we confiscate some stuff, we're going to keep it.
That's the point that I think people don't understand. It's like, listen, they're already getting this in all directions, whether they want it or not. They're just going to, maybe they just aren't going to throw it back on the market. They'll just hold on to it instead.
Exactly. That's what happened. So it'll be interesting to see where this goes. What do you kind of wrap this up for me? Is this the tectonic shift? Is this a black swan, or is it fake news?
No, I think this is meaningful. I do. And not to the point that like any of these companies are going to get at Nvidia is going to face it. Like Nvidia is going to be on it. They are the targeted one. They are the ones that are going to sell off. And in my opinion, rightfully so. But you just can't have an event like this where AI has been literally the thing that has catapulted magnificent stocks higher. Magnificent 7, right? Right now you have 40%. Now after today, it won't be 40%.
It won't be 40% today.
40% of the S&P 500 is in the top 10 names. And every single one of them, and I don't care, you call Tesla a car company or whatever, consumer discretion, and you call Amazon not tech. They're all tech. Meta doesn't technically categorize as tech. It's consumer, or it's whatever. It's communication. At the end of the day, you can't have every one of those companies create the meaningfully positive tailwind that they've had on the backs of AI, and then have AI massively get called to court and say, listen, is this going to do what we think it's going to do? Have we justified our spend? No one's justified their spend. No. How much do shareholders punish those companies for poor capital expenditure is the real question.
Yeah. The only thing you could say right now is it does appear that hundreds of billions of dollars in capital has been lit on fire.
It is very, unless this is totally fake news and everything that we're getting is nonsense, which I think, to your point, the fact that this is open source and they can go right to the back end of it, how could it be?
I'm going to let the smarter people dig into that.
We'll be referencing Morgan Brown, who I don't follow, don't know, but I will now be following him myself.
There you go. Again, Morgan Brown. Good job. Yeah, it's going to be really interesting. And I think at the end of this, consumers are going to win, because if this new engineering model works where they have these experts and they just lie dormant, when I really think about that, I think about, instead of being one of the top 7 trying to create the most godlike AI, now we're just going to have the best accountant, the best, engineer, the best this, the best that. You could have more competition in those AI models. And then you could say, hey, I'm going to go out and use this one for tax season. I'm going to use this one for getting healthy. I'm going to use this one for that. I think at net, it's positive, but it does make hundreds of billions of dollars go to zero, which,
one of Jeff Bezos's most famous lines of all time is, your margin is my opportunity. And China just plastered that across a billboard across the entire world.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing. Again, folks, if you want to know about life goal investments, you can go to lifegoalwealthadvisors.com/introduction. Thanks, buddy.
Appreciate you, Michael.
Mm-hmm.